Hey guys, it's been a while since I made a video, but a few weeks ago I got a lathe and a mill, and for my first project I decided to make an Abloy Classic pick. Now I take no credit for this tool's design. Huxley Pig was the first person to publish the design of this tool, and he creates some really outstanding tools that are heat treated and have brass handles, and they're really works of art. What I have here are a rather crude replication of his tool along with the Safe Ventures tool as well. However, they are functional and I'm quite happy with them, having never machined anything before. So as you can see, I made two of these. The first one I made is on top here, and this one had some flaws. First off, when I was milling the pick portion of the tool, it bent. It bent inwards, which is better than outwards, but it still makes the tool difficult to use. Another thing that I should have done differently that I can fix is that the thickness of the pick is a little too thick. So it has to be thin enough that it fits in between the discs. In between the discs is like a very small, very thin spacer. So the thickness of the pick has to be really thin as well. So on the second tool here, I corrected that. So I made the pick portion a little thinner. Another thing you'll notice that's different is that the tensioner is smaller, and that's because the Camlocks only tension off one disc and the standard locks tension off two. So I wanted to start by picking the Camlocks, so that's why I made the tension part of the tool a little bit smaller. The tensioners are interchangeable though, so I could just swap one out with the other, which is what I do when I want to pick a standard Abloy Classic. I still need to make the markings for depth and space on the handles. Right now all I have is a line I milled here which indicates the depth of the tensioner, and then for the pick there is a little marking of Sharpie which indicates the tip of the pick. So I'll get around to making the handle soon. Right now I'm waiting on a knurling tool before I start making those. So let me get started picking here. Today I'll be picking an Abloy Camlock. This one has 9 discs. Here's the key. Abloy Classics are key retaining. And so I'll get started here. I have to do a side view for this. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is just insert the pick all the way into the lock. And I'm going to apply tension. And then like any other lock, now I'm going to look for the binding element. But the first thing I'm going to do is just going to rotate this first steel disc 45 degrees. So I've only picked a couple disc detainers before picking an Abloy, and the Abloy is much more difficult because of the false gates. The two disc detainers I've picked before this didn't have false gates. And another thing that's different is that you have to be really conscious of where your pick is without the depth and space markings. So I think once I add the depth and space markings, it'll be a lot easier to pick these locks. And there is some tension control required. When you're on a heavily binding disc, you'll have to release tension to pick it. So right now disc 3 is caught in a false gate, so I'm going to release tension and keep rotating until the disc stops again. So now I'm on disc 4. Almost all these discs have false gates. Okay, so I lost my position, so I'm going to just work from the back of the lock now. Okay, so I've rotated all the discs, so I must be caught on a false gate, so I'm just going to check them. Oh, there we go. It was disc 2 that held us up. So that was an Abloy Classic pick. And then let me remove it real quick so I can show you the back of the lock. You can see that piece on the back is rotated, and then to remove the pick I'm going to have to rotate the discs back, because you can't just pull it out because the discs are all rotated. So I'm going to rotate it back. And then I'll gut this lock once I get this out. Okay. So I put electrical tape around the lock because this piece on the back will bind on the jaws of the vise. I'm going to have to remove the circlip. Got it going now. All right. So let me move the camera back. So the sidebar and the first disc fell out. Okay, so here you can see all the discs and the spacers in between them. And then once all the discs are rotated, the sidebar, which fits in right here, will fall into the plug, and it'll allow the plug to rotate. So let me put this in the vise and show you. So here you can kind of see the false gates on the discs. And then once the correct key is inserted, can see that all the discs move, and that will allow the sidebar to fall in. So anyway, that has been the Abloy Classic picked and gutted. Thanks for watching, guys. I think I'm going to make a few more of these tools, and then I'm going to move on to a tool for a different lock. I'm thinking maybe the Chubb AVA, the Abloy Century, or Abloy Novel. I'm not really sure, but have a good night.